Today's lesson we're going to factor trinomials, and we're actually going to have 4 different types of trinomials here. One of them, the first one we'll do, you'll have both addition signs, then you'll have one with a minus in the middle, positive at the end, positive in the middle, negative at the end, negative and negative. So there's really 2 main steps here. These are the kind of steps that I came up with. So the first one, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the very last term of your problem, which is going to be your C value, and you're going to find all of the factors of that term. So what times what gives you that number? So find all of the numbers and multiply together that give you the last number. After you do that, then you're going to find a combination of those factors that are going to either add up or kind of combine to give you what the middle term is. So let's go ahead and do this first example, and I'll show you how all of this works. So look at your last term, and that's a 12. So what I want to do is I want to list all of the factors of 12. So what times what gives you 12? And this is a positive 12. So you have a 1 and a 12. You have 2 and 6. And then you have also 3 and 4. Now also to get a positive, you could also have your negative. So negative 1 times negative 12 would also give you a positive 12. Just like this would give you positive 12 and positive 12. Once you get really good at this, you don't actually have to write all these factors down over on the side. You can pretty much do it in your head, but for the first few of these, I am going to write all these down just so that you see where your answers are coming from. So once you have all the factors, then you're going to go to step number 2, and you're going to find the combination of the factors that add up to give you the middle term. So we're looking here for a positive 7. So obviously 1 plus 12 doesn't work, 2 plus 6 doesn't work, 3 plus 4 will give you positive 7. So then your final step, once you figure out what those numbers are, you're going to write down 2 groups of parentheses. Your first number is going to be an x, and that's going to be from this x squared, because x times x gives you x squared. And then you're going to write down, and in either order, it doesn't matter, just as long as your signs, in this case both signs are both positive, so it doesn't really matter if the 4 came here or the 3 came here. So your final answer is x plus 3 and x plus 4. Now if you do a quick check of this, and a quick check means that you're going to use your FOIL method or distributive property. If you multiply that out, so x times x would give you x squared, x times 4 would give you 4x, 3 times x give you 3x, and 3 times 4 would give you 12. You would combine your middle term, that would give you 7x, and you'll see that that's what you end up with your original problem. So we know that we did it correctly, and this is the answer that we're looking for. So when the directions ask you to factor this trinomial, this is that trinomial factored. So let's go ahead and move to the next example. Last number is a 10, so we want to find all of the factors of 10. So that's 1 and 10, and 2 and 5. And because these are both positive, I'm not going to do the negatives because I know that that negative part isn't going to work, but we would have a negative 1, negative 10, and negative 2, negative 5. So we want to find the combination that gives us a 7. Obviously it's going to be the 2 and the 5. So your final answer here is going to be G plus 2 and G plus 5. And once again, you can have your 2 and your 5 in either order, so this group could be over here and that could be there. It's the same answer. Because it's multiplication, you can flip those around. Next example, so we have 20. So we're going to find all the factors of 20. So that's 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. And we want to find the combination that adds, that combines to give us a 21. So the 1 and the 20 is going to work. So you have x plus 1 and x plus 20. So this is factoring the trinomials when both of your signs there are both positive. Now, it really doesn't change a whole lot when you have a negative in the middle and a positive at the end. You're still going to find all of your combinations of 42. Now, since it's 42, you do have quite a bit more, so you're always going to have 1 and the number. Since it's even, you know that you're going to have 2, 2 and 21. Will 3 go in there? 3 will go in there 14 times. 4, will 4 go in there? No, that comes out to a decimal. And here's the other thing when you're doing these problems. As you're going down through, if you find the one that works right off the bat, you can kind of stop right there. You don't have to keep on going, because once you found it, you pretty much have your answer. Now, don't forget on these as well, because this is a positive 42 and this is a negative, you know that you're going to have some kind of negative numbers in here. So don't forget that you need to have your negative side as well. And I can actually stop here because I do know that I need to get a negative 17, and I know that these right here are going to combine to give me a negative 17. So I wouldn't have to continue to look for any other ones. I mean, I could do the 6 and the 7 and negative 6 and negative 7, but it's not going to help you out because you have the answer there. So our variable is D. Put in a negative 3 and negative 14. And if you want to do your check, multiply those out, you'll see that that works. That'll give you D squared. That'll be negative 14D. Negative 3D, when you combine those, I'll give you negative 17. And then negative 3 times a negative 14 will give you a positive 42. So here's another little trick that you can use. If you have a minus here in the middle and a positive over here, you should automatically know that both of your answers down here, both of these numbers have to be a negative number. So just like in this example, this is a negative and this is a positive. I know that they both have to be negative. So when you are doing your factors of 25, 1 and 25, they both have to be negative. Looks like if we do negative 5, that'll give us our negative 10. So you can put a negative 5 in both of them. You can do your check real quick and you'll find out that it does work. And one more example of this type. Let's see if we can do it without writing anything down. So you have a 18, positive 18, and you want to end up with a negative 11. So first of all, I know that's going to be x and x. I know that both of these are going to be negative. So what times what gives you 18? That's going to add up to give you a negative 11. So if you need to write it down over on this side, you can, if you figured out what it was. 9 and 2, or 2 and 9, either way. And then box your answer in. So then the next type, you'll see that this in the middle is positive, and over here, your last number is negative. So what's going to give you that kind of combination? Well, in this case, it's going to, one of the numbers for your answers, one of those numbers is going to have to be a negative number. So what you want to say to yourself, Okay, so if this has to be negative, one of these has to be a positive, and one of those has to be a negative. So what times what gives you negative 27? That'll add up to give you a positive 6. Now be very careful of this because you want a positive 6 as your final answer. So in this case, it may be good to write down all of the factors. So 1 and 27, so one of them would have to be a negative. Obviously, that's not going to give you a positive 6. 2 won't work. Looks like 3 and 9. So do a negative. Looks like one of those is going to work. Now remember, we want a positive 6. So if you go 9 minus 3, that would give you a positive 6. So your positive 9 goes there. Your negative 3 goes there. So like I said, if you get really good at doing these in your head or figuring out what the factors are, you don't have to write this part down. If you're more comfortable doing that, go ahead. Next example, put a box around that. Next example, variable is m. So we have a positive and a negative. So once again, your answer here is going to be positive and negative. What times what gives you negative 20? That's going to then add up to give you a positive 10. So how about we do a positive 10 and a negative 2? Because 10 times negative 2 will give you negative 20, and 10 minus 2 will give you a positive 8. Here's another one. This one's a little bit different now. You notice that both of these signs are negative. So if both of your signs are negative, that's also going to mean that one of your answers is positive and one of them is negative. So these two examples basically very similar. Your answer is one positive and one negative. So say to yourself, what times what gives you negative 18? That's going to add up to give me a negative 3. So in this case, negative 6, positive 3, because that times that gives you negative 18, and this plus that gives you the negative 3. And I believe I got 2 more for you. Just 2 more examples. So you have p squared minus 3p minus 40. So first you're going to have p and p. One's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. So sometimes when you have numbers over here, and it may not be extremely obvious as to what they are, it may be a good idea to come over here onto the side and start just listing all the factors. Another thing that becomes very helpful is if you have a calculator, you can always just take that number, start dividing it by just random numbers. Usually what you should do is like start from the lowest and then work your way up until you find what works. So if you take 40 divided by 2, you get 20. If you don't know and then you tried 40 divided by 3, anytime that you get a decimal, that's never going to work, so that doesn't work. 40 divided by 4. And then remember, while you're doing all of these, you're looking for a combination that's going to end up to give you your middle number. So we don't have that. 10 minus 4 doesn't give you the negative 3 or even negative 4 plus 10. So just keep going until you think you found it. 8 and 5, is any combination of 8 and 5 going to give you a negative 3? Looks like it will, so it looks like a negative 8 and a positive 5 will work. And once again, you can multiply that out, check your answer, and see if it works. And then our last one here, So we're going to have a y. We have negative and negative, so one has to be positive, one has to be negative. We have a negative 56, so we need to find out what's going to give us a negative 1. So by trial and error, if you want to use the calculators to start dividing some different numbers, you should notice that because this is a 1, the two numbers are going to have to be very close to each other. So if you do, let's see, what will work? How about 7 and 8, and we want a negative 1, so the 8's going to have to be bigger. And if you would multiply those out, you would see that that works. And that basically is how you're going to factor trinomials. And remember, there are 4 different types, but the last two types that we did here are basically the same. One's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. The one before that, both of them are negative, and then the one that has all positive, everything is positive.